Hey everyone, this is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovators Mindset Podcast. And I'm trying something a little bit different that I haven't done before. I want to share a video with you that I saw by Dan Pink. Dan Pink is someone I've really looked up to over the years. Really has pushed my thinking on the notions of assessment, motivation, and really how we inspire people and find the version of our best selves. And he talks about this idea of two scores, and I'll talk about that. But it reminded me of a post that I wrote titled The Sponge Factor. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll actually see the post that I'm working on right now. It's in a preview mode, but I'll talk about why he shared or what he shared and why it matters. So if you're listening to this podcast, it's still going to work if you're just hearing the audio of it, but you can also see this on YouTube and you kind of see the video as well. So I just want to play the video real quick of Dan Pink and what he shared and why it matters.
In 30 years of writing about human performance, here's the most important thing I've learned about feedback. You get two scores. The first score is obvious, the grade, the review, the evaluation. That part feels big, but it's not the one that matters most. What matters more is the second score, and that's how you respond to the first score. Do you get defensive, resentful, busy explaining why the first score was unfair? Or do you get curious, calm, focus on what to do next? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't remember your first score for very long, but they remember the second one. How you handle criticism, how you handle disappointment, how you handle not getting what you wanted. You don't control the first score, but you completely control the second one.
Absolutely love this video. I think it is very pertinent and relevant to education. And I termed this years ago. I can't remember when I wrote this. 2015 is actually the date. What I call the sponge factor. One of the things that I looked for in people that we hired in our school was their ability to learn, was their ability to adapt. So much so that I would actually challenge, I know this sounds weird, I would challenge people in interviews that were applying for jobs just to see how they would react to a little bit of pushback. Would they be open to it? And they didn't necessarily need to agree with me. That wasn't the point of it all. But could they actually have that conversation, to have that back and forth? Because when you're looking at who you are hiring, if you take two candidates and you have one that feels they don't need to learn anything else because they've reached the top, but someone who's maybe a little bit less at that point in their career, but is willing to grow, eventually that person will surpass them because they know they are always willing to develop. And what I thought about immediately when I saw this video, and by the way, I'm trying something new because I'm still trying to figure stuff out. I'm still trying to do new things. This is not, I've seen people do this all over the internet over the years. So it's not new to others, but it's new to me. And I continuously want to try some different things. When I first saw this video by Dan Pink, what resonated with me was something that I experienced in education or in my basketball reffing career. And a lot of people don't actually know this, but reffing is a very competitive endeavor. What I mean by that is basically people are trying to get to different levels. They might ref at high school, but they eventually want to get to the college level. And I actually have a very good friend who I reffed with in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He's in the NBA. He's the first Canadian there too. And how do you actually move up in reffing? And I joke about this, but it is very relevant that great leadership and great referees, they have this one thing in common, is that they're really good at their job. People don't notice them. But if they're bad, people notice them. So think about those games where you notice the ref. Something's going on there. And it's the same is true in leadership. But how do people actually grow? And it's exactly what Dan Pink was talking about. It was how they accepted feedback. So when we were actually going through the process of, kind of moving up the ranks and basically people seeing how you were, developing your craft, one of the things that would happen that most people don't know, you would ref like a high level game and there would be an evaluator somewhere in the stands watching you. So you would go in at halftime and they would basically give you feedback, and there's no time for compliments. You've got about 10 minutes maximum before you get that feedback, and then you go into the second half. So they are blunt. They are saying, you need to fix this. You need to try this. I don't like this, whatever. So they share all this feedback with you. What they looked at and what really mattered to them was, were you willing to implement the feedback in the second half? Or were you someone who's going to just think about it, wait a while to do it, because then you weren't willing to grow quickly enough for them. And it didn't really show that you were open to that, because that evaluator might see you once, never see you even try the things that they had suggested. Now, it doesn't mean that you would do everything they say and you just be compliant to their requests, but it was the process of basically just taking that feedback and at least trying to see how it works. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to figure out how I could do something similar here. So I talked about this, and I reshared this post, and I defined the notion of the sponge factor. And it was simply this: the sponge factor is someone's ability to absorb new knowledge and feedback from learning and interactions and transform them into improved practices and possibly new and better ideas. Every time I write a book or write a blog post, I don't want to just kind of stay in the same thing. Like, there's some routines that really, really matter, but I also want to kind of adapt and grow over time. I first started blogging probably, I think, in 2009, 2008. So it's been, it's almost 2 decades, which is unbelievable to me. And it's been one of the best things for my growth. But I also started, podcasting. This is what I'm doing right now. I do some YouTube, TikTok, whatever. Just trying, and not because I'm trying to get attention, but I'm thinking, how does this actually help learning? When I discuss these ideas, it really kind of sticks in my mind. This is one of the most important things that you can actually develop in students, the ability to adapt. There is a post I wrote in January 2026, and you can kind of see what I'm reading here too. And I write in the post, we are not preparing students for jobs that don't we are not only preparing students for jobs that don't currently exist, but also a workplace where many jobs will no longer exist. There's always going to be new opportunities, new technologies, new things will develop because of it. But all those technologies, they're actually they're replacing a lot of jobs too. The most important thing that we can teach students is the ability to adapt, to try different things, because if they don't have the ability to do that, then they're going to be in trouble, because things are going to change at an exponential space. And again, I share this: the ability to learn no matter what comes our way is more crucial than ever. It helps guide students and ourselves to see possibilities in a future full of uncertainty. So I share the original post where I talked about this referencing thing, but I want to talk about a few ways that as Daniel Pink was sharing, I try to create this feedback loop myself, and not necessarily just counting on others, but is this something I'm consistently going through? So I shared 3 examples, and I encourage people to share ideas of how they take feedback and learn. So the first one might be a little shocking, is I actually talked about learning an instrument. Excuse me. I actually remember it was my brother's wedding, and I was the best man, and I wanted to do a song and play a guitar and sing a song for him. Problem was, I never learned to play guitar, so I had no idea how to play the guitar. So for about 2 weeks prior to his wedding, I literally locked myself in my house over summer until I could figure out how to play the guitar. And it was just a process, and there's a lot of feedback you get when you touch the wrong string, when the note is off, and you get this. And there's a really interesting quote from it's jazz musician Thelonious Monk, said, "The piano ain't got no wrong notes." And the thing is, if you look at a piano, all the notes are right, but how you play them together tells you something. So it gives you a feedback immediately. So I share this, that learning an instrument has not only taught me to adjust, but also the importance of routine and knowing the basics inside out. That's something that really is important to me, is when you are trying to change, when you're trying to do different things. I have someone who has a big life change that's happening right now. One of the things I suggested to her was, you need to do everything to find routine right now, because routine will kind of give you some balance and stability to find new structure. Learning how to play the piano, there's a lot of routine there, and it teaches you the skills over and over again that you get to a place where you can adapt. But immediately, if you hit the wrong note, there's instant feedback. How do you adapt to it? Do you try again, or you just kind of give up? Because like I said, I learned guitar, I think it was 29 or 30. I actually started playing the piano at 49, and all those keys, They're all right. How you play them will give you instant feedback. So the second one I shared was this, blogging. And I really believe this has promoted a sponginess in me. I remember talking to Dave Burgess, and he was really, I was nervous about writing a book with him. And the nervousness, I know this sounds weird, was I had written a blog and I was very comfortable with that, because if I made a mistake, put a grammar error in my blog post, or had a spelling mistake, I could just go edit it and it's done. But a book, there's a permanence to it, and I kind of make the idea that it's almost like a stone tablet. Once the ink is in there and someone has that book, that's it. You're stuck with what you said on the day. Now, there's ways that you can actually edit books after the fact, and when they're published, they're cleaned up. But that's something, that permanence kind of was nervous for me. And so when I wrote the book Forward Together, what is really interesting about it, I know I shouldn't be saying my own book's interesting, but I really do think it's a good book, is it starts off with a blog post that I wrote in 2011 that I'm embarrassed by to this day. And it's interesting because I have gone back to old posts and I'm revisiting them. I can add new thoughts to them, add new ideas to them, even though I wrote them years ago. And it's beautiful because I have this archive of my learning that I've developed over time. That to me is really amazing. But it's not just that as well. When I first wrote Innovator's Mindset, I looked at some of the blog posts I had written over time and what really resonated with people. And I was like, hey, this actually is something that, I should put in a book. And as I was writing the book, I remember I was very adamant that I kept my blogging schedule up while I was writing a book. I didn't want to disappear from my blog and then a year later have a book come out. But I used the blogging space and the comments and the pushback to push my thinking. So I can't remember what the idea was. And I've done this with all my books. I'll share something online and I'll see what the reaction is and what people say. And then I'll kind of get in a conversation with them. So the original thought that was out there has actually modified based on feedback from the crowd. And that has really helped me over time. And I've mentioned it several times. There's actually a few times in my books where I've mentioned comments from people in blog posts that really helped me share my thinking. I remember one was from Carolyn Jensen, who was someone who I worked with when she was an assistant principal when I was a principal. And I share this little chart from Forward Together, where I talk about why I'm comfortable putting ideas out there and getting pushback on that. And it goes from this place of being confident, being comfortable that I don't know everything, but I can always get better. Whereas insecurity, you wouldn't put those ideas out because you don't want to look bad. And arrogance is like, I just know better than everybody. You have to be in that confidence space, is that, yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. But I think I'm such an advocate of blogging because it makes you really put your ideas out there and really kind of think them out before you put them out there. But you just get such tremendous feedback. That's one of the ways I create that feedback loop that Dan Pink talks about. So the last one I share is this idea of consuming information that I do not agree with. There are several books, and there's some books out there right now where I know the premise of the book and I know it's very different than what I believe. And those are the ones I want to read the most. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but I really do like reading those books because I actually believe, and I share this in the blog post, that either it can change my mind because I'm always open to learning. I don't know everything. Maybe I'm wrong. And if you make an argument that makes more sense to me than what I'm sharing, I'll change my mind. When presented new information, are you willing to think differently? And then also, but if I don't agree with it, I know I'm going to hear about it. So it really forces me to tighten up my own thinking. If you followed any of my work, I'm not necessarily big on anxious generation. I actually agree with a lot of Jonathan Haidt's concerns that he shares in the books, but his approach is different. His approach feels more like don't teach, and my approach is to fix the problems we teach. And whether you agree with me or not, I knew that it would be brought up in presentations that I shared. So if it's going to be brought up, I better know the book. I better know what is being shared in that space, because then I can address it directly, as opposed to kind of, thinking something that he actually shared. And I was really inspired by this blog post years ago. And I think it was titled "The Other Side Is Not Done" by Sean Blanda. Really, really powerful. And he talks about like listening to other viewpoints. And one of the things he shares, and I just love this quote: "As any debate club veteran knows, if you can't make your opponent's point for them, you don't truly grasp the issue." And that has always stuck with me. And that is something I really believe is when you are getting, and you're not getting in debates because debates declare winners and losers. It's about discussion. How do we work together to find the best possible solution? But you really have to understand someone else's side, and it might change your thinking. It's not about understanding their side so that you can use their words against them. It's understanding their side so you can really understand their perspective. And in Forward Together, this is one of my favorite things that I shared that I wrote myself. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's something I believe is that curiosity is part skepticism and part wonder. There is such an importance to have skepticism, not only with the ideas you disagree with, but more importantly, with the ideas you do agree with. Like, are you drawn to something just because you believe it at first? And if you believe it at first, you really want to poke holes in it to make sure that you're on the right track. You're not just having that bias, before you even, accept an idea. And I share this in the blog post. The most important skepticism we can have in our world today is the idea that we already agree with or want to believe is true. So really looking for pushback to your ideas. If you have a view in education, I know it's weird. I enjoy it. I actually enjoy it because it makes, like I said, it might change my perspective, but it really will tighten my ideas as well. So I just wanted to try something different. I wanted to share that video. I'm trying some different stuff. You can still listen to this, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube. I appreciate it. But I wanted to just kind of try this and see if this is something I add to ways I share information, share some ideas. But I really appreciate you being here, taking the time to learn alongside of me. And I hope you got something out of this. But I want you to think yourself, what are some ways that you create those feedback loops for yourself? I don't want to just count on other people pushing me. I want to create that. I'm telling you, one of the things I'm adamant about, every kid should learn an instrument. It helps you learn in such a way, teaches the importance of routines, but that really powerful feedback. I also am a big advocate of blogging, but also, as you can tell from my work in Forward Together, I really wanted to know, learn from people that I disagree with. I'm not trying to debunk their arguments. I'm trying to understand their perspectives. And I think that matters more in a world that is so divided. And that feedback loop, how you adapt to something, is what's going to create incredible opportunities to you. So I appreciate the reminder from Dan Pink and what he shares. And I'll link that video down below. But thank you so much for being here. I hope you learned something, because I know I have. I appreciate all you do. Take care.